It wasn't just the way she vanished, it was where. In the middle of a quiet town. In a locked house. Surrounded by friends. That kind of evil isn't supposed to exist here. But it did, and it walked right through the front door. August 2011. Missoula, Montana. College junior Lindsey Carter never came back from a friend's birthday party just 5 blocks from her home. She wasn't a runaway. She wasn't reckless. She had a plan, and it was unfolding until something, or someone, ripped it away. What followed would expose the dark side of a picturesque town and ignite a manhunt that stunned the country. Missoula, Montana, sat in the shadow of the Bitterroot Mountains like something out of a postcard. The kind of place where people still left their front doors unlocked and teens walked home from parties without fear. In August 2011, the summer was slipping into its golden tail, and Lindsey Carter was preparing to start her junior year at the University of Montana. She was majoring in pre-law with a minor in environmental studies. Ambitious, disciplined, kind, her roommate, Elise, once described her as the mom friend, the one who carried band-aids in her purse. Who texted when you got home? Who remembered your exam dates even when you didn't? Her father, Tom Carter, had been a sheriff's deputy for over 15 years. He'd seen what the world was capable of, but even he felt safe in Missoula. Lindsey had grown up with strict rules, no sleepovers with boys. Phone always charge, check-in texts every 2 hours when she was out, and she followed those rules. Always. So when Elise woke up the morning of August 27th to find Lindsey's bed unslept in, her phone still on the nightstand, her keys hanging on the hook, and her favorite sandals by the door, she knew something was terribly wrong. Maybe she crashed to Abby's after the party, her boyfriend Jake said, but Elise was already shaking her head. She always calls. She would never just not show up. By 9:30 a.m., Elise had called Lindsey's phone at least 14 times. No answer. Just voicemail. She texted Lindsey's mom. Then her dad. Tom Carter didn't wait. By 10:15, he was at the front door with a copy of the key in his hand and fear in his heart. Tom Carter had seen missing persons cases before. He'd worked dozens, maybe hundreds, over his 18 years with the Missoula County Sheriff's Department. Most were runaways. A few were custody disputes. Very few were what they feared the most. Real abductions. But this was his daughter. And nothing about it made sense. At 10:30 a.m. on August 27th, Tom walked into Lindsey's apartment on S 5th Street East. It was a modest, 2-bedroom rental just off campus, sandwiched between a dentist's office and a yoga studio. The door was locked, no signs of forced entry. The living room was tidy. Coffee mugs in the sink. Nothing out of place, except the silence. Her phone sat charging on the nightstand. Screen cracked at the corner. She dropped it during finals week but never bothered to fix it. Her bed was still perfectly made. Her keys were still in the ceramic dish by the front door. But no Lindsey. Tom moved slowly, methodically, pushing open the bathroom door, checking the closet, the laundry room, the balcony. Nothing. He pulled out his personal phone and called her again. Still voicemail. At 11:02 a.m., he called dispatch. "This is Deputy Tom Carter. I need a unit and forensics over at 519 S 5th Street East. Possible missing person, 21-year-old female. My daughter, blank, underscore, blank." By noon, detectives were on the scene. The first thing they noticed, no forced entry, no struggle. Lindsey's purse was still on the kitchen counter. Her credit cards untouched. Her laptop open, logged into Spotify. Last song played, Midnight City by M83. A track she loved and had played at least 20 times that summer. It ended at 12:46 a.m. Elise filled in what she could. "We went to Charlie's pub. Then Abby's house on Higgins. It was Abby's birthday. We left around 12:15. Walked home together most of the way. And split near Van Buren Street. I live 2 blocks north. She texted me when she got home." Detectives checked Lindsey's phone. The last outgoing text, timestamped 12:43 a.m. Read, "Home safe. Night red heart." But here's the thing, she never made it inside. Her door was still locked from the outside. That meant either she left again, or someone got to her before she ever crossed the threshold. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Tom's mind was spinning. It couldn't be random. Missoula wasn't like that, but he knew better than most. Evil didn't always wear a mask. Sometimes, it wore a smile. Sometimes, it lived across the street. Police canvassed the neighborhood. A few students reported seeing Lindsey that night, walking alone near the footbridge on Van Buren. One witness, an insomniac grad student named Raoul Chow, recalled hearing footsteps around 12:45, followed by what he described as a short, high-pitched yelp, like surprise, not pain. "I thought it was a fox or something," he said. "Didn't think much of it." That footbridge connected the north side of the university campus with the downtown area. It was only a 5-minute walk from where Lindsey had last been seen. By 3 p.m., search and rescue was deployed. Bloodhounds sniffed a shirt from Lindsey's hamper and led officers toward the footbridge. But halfway across, they stopped, confused, then turned in a circle. The scent disappeared. It was as if she'd been swallowed by the night. Blank. Blank. By 6 p.m., Lindsey Carter was declared missing. Not a runaway. Not a case of mistaken plans. Missing. Tom stood in the kitchen of his daughter's apartment as Detective Emily Park laid out the situation. "She was last seen around 12:30 a.m., Park said. "No known enemies. No recent fights with friends or boyfriend. She broke up with Jake 3 months ago," Tom said. "Mutual. No drama. They're still friends. I've talked to him already. He's in Kalispell this weekend with his parents. He's not involved." What about stalkers? Unusual followers on social media? She had over 3,000 Instagram followers. Elise said quietly. She used to post a lot of hiking pics. There were a few weird DMs. But nothing serious. They collected the phone, took the laptop, logged into her Instagram and Gmail accounts. And there, buried beneath dozens of harmless messages, was one they didn't like. From an account named at TwistedPine00. Sent 4 days earlier. "I've seen you by the river. That blue tank top makes you look like a breath I'd like to stop." It hadn't been reported. Lindsey hadn't mentioned it to anyone. Maybe she thought it was just another online creep. Maybe it wasn't. By the morning of August 28th, Missoula was no longer a peaceful college town. News of Lindsey Carter's disappearance had spread like wildfire. The university sent out a campus-wide alert. Local stations ran her picture at the top of every hour. The Missoula Current ran the headline. Student vanishes after birthday party, foul play suspected. Flyers were taped to lampposts and coffee shop windows. Blue ribbons, Lindsey's favorite color, were tied to fence posts across campus. But underneath the community concern was a growing unease. Because this wasn't the first time someone had gone missing near the Clark Fork River. Blank. Detective Emily Park wasn't the kind to jump to conclusions. A former FBI liaison turned local investigator. She had a reputation for letting evidence lead the story. But something about this case bothered her, not just because the victim was the daughter of a well-respected deputy. No, it was the proximity. "Do you remember the Kendra Malone case?" she asked Sergeant Ritter as they stood beneath the Higgins Avenue Bridge. Ritter nodded. "Yeah, 19. Went missing in March. Found her jacket in the river. Never found her. Same pattern. No signs of struggle. No digital trail. Just vanished. And nobody ever confirmed it was an abduction." Ritter said. "Could have been suicide. She was afraid of water. Wouldn't even go tubing in the Blackfoot." Park said. "I checked her psych eval from the university clinic. No suicidal ideation. So you think we have a serial?" "I think we have a pattern. Blank. The search that morning focused on the Clark Fork River. Dozens of volunteers combed the banks, wading through brush, overturning logs, calling Lindsey's name. At 9:47 a.m., about 200 yards downstream from the Van Buren footbridge, Officer Lisa Chan spotted something caught in a low branch near the waterline. It was a single white Converse sneaker, size 7, with a faded yellow sun drawn on the toe in permanent marker. Elise confirmed it immediately. "That's Lindsey's." Divers were called in. They scanned the river for hours. Visibility was poor. The recent storms had churned up silt and debris, but by early afternoon, they found something else. A burner phone. No case. No SIM card. Powered off. It had been duct taped inside a Ziploc bag and weighed down with a fishing sinker. It wasn't Lindsey's. And whoever left it knew exactly what they were doing. The serial number had been scratched off. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Back at the department, Detective Park ran through the contents of Lindsey's personal accounts. Messages, emails, search history, and something unusual popped out. 3 weeks earlier, Lindsey had searched how to tell if someone is following you. Signs your phone is hacked. Can someone spy on me through Wi-Fi? She hadn't told anyone. Not her roommate, not her dad, not her best friend Claire in Bozeman. But it was there, digital breadcrumbs, hinting at a fear she never voiced aloud. That night, Park returned to the apartment with a forensic IT specialist. They checked Lindsey's laptop for spyware, backdoors, or unauthorized access. Nothing. But her home Wi-Fi router? That told a different story. There had been multiple connection attempts from an unknown device in the past month, always between midnight and 2 a.m. Someone had been probing the network, watching her, possibly from close range. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The next morning, a new witness came forward. His name was Travis Lang, a bartender at Charlie's Pub. He remembered seeing Lindsey the night of the 26th, but more importantly, he remembered who was watching her. Guy came in alone, mid-30s, brown hoodie, just sat there nursing a Coors and staring at her. You recognize him? Park asked. Travis nodded. Sort of. Think he came in once last month too. Didn't talk to anyone. Just watched. Security footage confirmed it. At 11:08 p.m. Lindsey and her friends are laughing at a corner booth. And sitting 2 tables behind them is a man in a hoodie. Ball cap pulled low. Never smiling. Never drinking fast. Just watching. No clear shot of his face. But there was one detail. He left through the side alley exit at 12:07 a.m. The exact time Lindsey and Elise were leaving. Blank. Underscore. Blank. At 2:35 p.m. that afternoon, another tip came in. A woman named Andrea Salazar, a sophomore at said she thought someone had broken into her apartment, twice. First in early July, then again just last week. I keep everything locked, she said, but I'd come home and stuff would be moved. My dresser drawers, underwear gone. Once I found a single rose on my pillow. No card. I thought maybe it was my ex. But now, she lived 3 blocks from Lindsey. She wasn't the only one. By the end of the day, 4 women in the university district reported similar stories. Items missing, unlocked windows, strange noises, flowers left behind, all within a 10-block radius. Missoula PD now had a working theory. Someone had been stalking women, not randomly, but carefully. He watched them, knew their schedules, knew when to strike. And Lindsey Carter may not have been his first, only his most confident. Russell Fletcher never stood out. Not the way you'd expect someone like him to. He was the kind of man who walked past you in the hardware aisle without a second glance. The guy who held the door open, nodded politely, then vanished into the background like dust behind a closing door. But the quiet ones, they always watch. They notice everything. And in this case, one of them had been watching for a very long time. Detective Park couldn't shake the feeling that this case wasn't the beginning of something, it was the middle. Something buried had been bubbling beneath Missoula's surface. And Lindsey Carter wasn't the first. Just the one who couldn't be ignored. She started connecting dots no one had before. A cold assault case from 2 years earlier. A woman named Kara Ellison. Same age, same campus. She'd been duct taped to a chair in her own apartment. Left there for hours. Gagged and terrified. Then freed, by him. No theft, no visible motive, no DNA, just the trauma. And his words. She remembered his voice. Calm, low, flat, almost rehearsed. He knew her name, called her by it like they were old friends. But she'd never seen his face. The details matched too closely to ignore. Then the calls started coming in. Other women, 4 of them, all from the university district. Small things. Unlocked windows they swore they'd shut. Missing clothing. A single rose left on a pillow. No sign of forced entry. No sound in the night. Just that sinking feeling that someone had been there. Park pulled the records. There'd been a noise complaint over the summer. A construction trailer parked just a block from Lindsey's apartment. Security guard on night shift. Mid-30s. Soft-spoken. Former military. No record. His name was Russell Dean Fletcher. She went to see him herself. He lived inside the trailer, surrounded by tools, job permits, military bumper stickers, and silence. He greeted her calmly, knew her name before she said it, told her he'd been following the case. "I don't sleep much," he said. "I read." When she asked to look inside his truck, he asked if she had a warrant. She didn't, not yet. But everything about him, his manner, his rehearsed answers, the absence of any visible emotion, screamed control. And something deeper, something rotting underneath that composure. 2 days later, she got the warrant. They opened his Silverado, and beneath the passenger seat, they found duct tape, a Ziploc bag filled with zip ties, a burner phone sealed in plastic, and a worn notebook. Inside that notebook were first names, dates, descriptions. Lindsey Carter's name was written in tiny block letters, along with 5 others. Then came the storage unit. Inside was a black duffel bag, 8 pairs of women's underwear, a digital camera with wiped memory, a mannequin head wearing a long blonde wig, and something else, another pair of white Converse sneakers, marked with a small yellow sun on the toe. The backup pair Lindsey always kept in her gym bag. It wasn't just stalking, it was cataloging. They arrested him on the spot. Back in interrogation, he was calm, too calm. He waived his right to counsel, sat across from Detective Park like they were 2 old friends meeting for coffee. She asked him the question directly, the one that had kept her up at night. "Did you take Lindsey Carter?" He didn't blink, didn't hesitate, just tilted his head slightly and smiled. "She smiled at me first. They say killers slip up. Eventually, they leave a trace, a fingerprint, a stray fiber, a word they shouldn't have said. But Russell Dean Fletcher didn't slip. He invited them in. The moment he smiled, the room dropped 5 degrees. It wasn't a smile of remorse or regret. It wasn't fear, or panic, or even arrogance. It was peace, like a man who'd finally been seen. He answered the rest of their questions like he was reciting a grocery list. Yes, he worked alone. Yes, he watched her. For weeks. No, he didn't hurt her. Not in the way they were thinking. He said she was peaceful when it happened. Said she drifted away. When Park pressed for details, how, when, where, his words turned to riddles. He talked about rivers, about silence, about how the earth folds things away if you listen to it long enough. She'd interviewed murderers before. This wasn't that. This was ritual. He didn't see himself as a predator. He saw himself as a conductor. Like he was composing some twisted symphony of control. And yet, for all the calm he wore like armor, his hands betrayed him. They twitched when he spoke about the woods. His pupils narrowed. His breath shortened. Whatever he'd done, wherever he'd done it, it wasn't in town. So they pulled the logs. Cell tower pings. Surveillance hits, and finally, a fuel purchase on August 27, 5:30 in the morning. A single transaction at a gas station just outside Lolo National Forest. 17 gallons, paid in cash, but the timestamp was their key. It was enough for a search warrant. The next morning, they flew a chopper over the east ridge of the forest. It was dense, thick with cedar and pine, a place where people went to vanish. At the 2-hour mark, one of the rangers spotted something unnatural between the trees. A tarp, weather-worn, partially buried beneath dry needles and forest rot. As the team moved in, the smell hit first, sweet, metallic, old. Under the tarp, beneath layers of dirt and stone, they found her. Lindsey Carter's body was curled into herself, arms across her chest like she was trying to protect something. Her eyes were closed, duct tape still wrapped loosely around her wrists. There were bruises, but not deep, scratches on her shoulder, and around her neck, faint marks. Not from rope, from cloth, a twisted piece of cotton underwear tied too tight. She'd been there for days, maybe a week, but she hadn't been tossed. She'd been placed, her shoes removed, her earrings folded into her palm. He didn't just kill her. He arranged her. They taped off the entire clearing, marked every inch of disturbed ground, and found more than they expected. A shovel, a folding chair, cans of food, all dated 3 months back, and something else, a second tarp. Wrapped inside it was a second set of bindings. DNA would later confirm what Park already suspected. Lindsey hadn't been the first. And she likely wouldn't have been the last. They told her parents in person. Tom Carter didn't speak. He didn't cry. He just sat in the hallway outside the coroner's office with his hands locked between his knees. Eyes on the floor, jaw clenched so tightly the muscles twitched. Bridget, Lindsey's mom, collapsed into Elisa's arms. No scream, just a soft, suffocating gasp, like her soul had left the room before the words even finished landing. They say closure is a gift. That knowing is better than hoping. But hope, even when it's killing you, still holds you. Knowing drops you. And now they were falling. The community mourned. Blue ribbons turned into memorial candles. The footbridge where Lindsey was last seen was covered in flowers. Her picture taped to the railing with the words, "She deserved more." News trucks lined the streets. Candlelight vigils spread from Missoula to Bozeman to Helena. Her professors wept on camera. Strangers offered to pay for her funeral. And yet through it all, there was one question nobody could shake. How long had he been watching us? At the University of Montana, enrollment dropped 8% that fall. Parents pulled their daughters from dorms. Women stopped walking alone. And everywhere you turned, there was his face. Not in photos, they hadn't released one yet, but in the mind. In the shape behind you. In the man walking too close. In the neighbor you never really knew. Fear was everywhere. And then came the trial. Russell Dean Fletcher pled not guilty. It stunned everyone. He had no alibi. The evidence was airtight. DNA on the bindings. Lindsey's notebook in his truck. Surveillance footage. A literal map of her routine folded in his jacket pocket. But his public defender leaned on mental instability. He was traumatized, they said. Former Army. 2 tours in Kandahar. PTSD. Delusional behavior. The term, sexual sadism disorder, was introduced to the jury, and then weaponized. The prosecutor didn't buy it. This isn't impulse, she said. This is orchestration. This is a man who planned, who mapped, who rehearsed. This is a man who collected. In the courtroom, Kara Ellison sat silently in the front row. She didn't speak, didn't blink. Her presence alone, living proof of what he could do, was more powerful than any testimony. The moment Elise took the stand, the courtroom went still. She described the night Lindsey disappeared. The party, the laughter, the text, the moment she realized the bed was still made. Her voice cracked only once, when she said, "She always came home, always." But the most unexpected witness was Tom Carter. He walked to the stand in full uniform, sat down, and looked Russell directly in the eye. "My daughter was better than you, smarter than you, kinder than you. You took her, you broke her body, but you didn't win, because we remember her, and you're nothing but a shadow that we dragged into the light." Russell never looked up, not once. Blank. Underscore, blank. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found him guilty on all counts: aggravated kidnapping, first-degree murder, sexual assault, and unlawful surveillance. Then came the penalty phase. Life without parole, or death. Lindsey's mother spoke directly to the jury. "I carried her. I raised her. I held her the day she was born and the day they pulled her from the forest. If you think his life deserves mercy, I want you to imagine that. In the end, they chose death, not because they hated him, because they feared who he might have become if they hadn't stopped him." Blank. Underscore, blank. But even after the verdict, the story wasn't over. 3 weeks later, Park got a call from an officer in Spokane. A woman there had seen the trial on TV, and something about the suspect's voice made her freeze. She was a survivor. A break-in. 7 years earlier, the man never touched her. He just stood in her doorway, breathing, watching. She never told anyone. Until now. And so the case was reopened. Not just as justice for Lindsey, but for the women who never got answers. They started digging. And what they found was more than anyone was ready for. They never found her name. She was just a skeleton when they pulled her from the dry well outside Libby, Montana. No ID. No missing persons report. No dental records. Just bones, weathered by time, clothing too faded to trace, and rope fibers still clinging to what used to be wrists. But inside her jawbone, wedged between 2 molars, they found a chip of plastic. It was a piece of a hair clip. Cheap, neon pink, The kind sold in gas stations and school vending machines. It shouldn't have been there. It wasn't an accident. It was a message. They ran the DNA anyway. Hopeful but realistic. 2 weeks later, the call came in. Partial match. Female, early 20s, linked to Russell Fletcher through a paternity marker. They had a daughter. Not Lindsey. A girl no one knew existed. No record of birth. No legal trail. Not even a whisper of her name in his past. Whoever she was, she had died the same way Lindsey had, bound, silenced, and left to be forgotten. Which meant one thing. Lindsey wasn't his first victim. She wasn't even his first family victim. Russell had started long before Missoula. And he hadn't just stalked strangers. He had tested his cruelty on blood. Blank. Underscore. Blank. They reopened every cold case within a 3-state radius. Disappeared hikers. Missing waitresses. College girls who were last seen walking home alone. And though not every thread tied back to him, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Russell Dean Fletcher had traveled. Construction jobs. Temporary contracts. 3 months here. 5 months there. A cabin in Washington. A trailer in Idaho. Every town he left had a hole behind it. The kind no one noticed until it began to stink. He wasn't just a predator. He was a collector. And Missoula was the one place that finally caught up to him. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The death penalty ruling was appealed, like they always are, but it held. And 5 years later, in a sterile concrete room in Ely, Nevada, Russell Dean Fletcher was strapped to a table and injected with poison while 3 survivors and the family of Lindsey Carter watched in silence. He never spoke. Not in court. Not on death row. Not in his final moments. He left the world the same way he walked through it, unnoticed by most. Unforgettable to few. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Lindsey's mother started a foundation. They called it Project Quiet Watch. It provided campus surveillance funding, safety training for women living off campus, and legal support for victims of stalking and voyeurism. The blue ribbon from Lindsey's vigil became the organization's logo. Tom Carter retired 2 years after the sentencing. He moved to Flathead Lake, built birdhouses. Some days he speaks to high school classes about the cost of not paying attention. Most days, he doesn't speak at all. Elise moved to Oregon, still keeps a picture of Lindsey on her dresser, still triple locks her windows. And Detective Emily Park? She stayed, still walks the bridge some nights, still keeps a piece of yellow Converse shoelace in her desk drawer. Still hears that voice, soft, flat, like a lullaby with broken teeth. She smiled at me first. But more than the voice, she remembers the silence. The quiet ones always watch. But now, so does she.